John, in our story, the character of Nora is completely transformed by her relationship with music. Tell us about Nora.
In looking at the character of Nora, of course, Jake and Jean are the ones to really ask about the character, but mine, of course, is the conductor's interpretation of what Jake is giving me. But I see in Nora that we all have, mankind has this characteristic, and the characteristic is that we can all decide at some given point in our lives, and I know I have, and I think most people have, that we hate this and we hate that, and we're mad at this and we're mad at that, and we basically have gone into this very, very negative world and don't know how to get out of it. And that's what I see Nora is. She's at this point in her life, depending upon what age the speaker is, she's either late middle ages or just middle aged, but at any point, she's at the point in her life that she is lonely. She has probably lost her boyfriend, judging from the fact that there's this letter she sent out that never got answered. It wasn't even opened. It was sent back without even being opened. She's obviously really grieving over this. And she's become, the whole opera starts out with her mad at everybody on the street. She's mad at the car. She's mad at the people walking down the street. Anybody and everything she sees, she's mad at, and she lets everybody know that. And she gets it, the unique thing that Jake did, she gets into her apartment, and Nora is a non-speaking person in this opera. She's an actress that does not, never speaks, never sings.
A silent actress.
A silent actress.
And we get the soundtrack to her thoughts and feelings and what's going on around her through the choirs.
At the end of the work, Nora is completely transformed by music. Jake, can you tell me how you imagined and created this transformation musically?
We had to find this together, and we're still finding it, because now rehearsals are in process, and as singers, this is the way it is in any opera that I do. You know, it belongs to us, the creative team, privately, and then it starts to belong to the world as you bring other people in. And those are the performers, the wonderful director we have for this project, Jim Towley, who is creating a wonderful vision on the stage for it. So there's a director involved who will give us a sense of motion, of character, of action, of direction, of an end goal.
Jake, how did you and Jean collaborate on the libretto?
Jean Shear, my librettist, and I have worked on many projects together. We've done 2 complete operas, one called 3 Decembers and Moby Dick, and we're working on yet another one that is based on It's a Wonderful Life. And we've written many, many songs. So we've gotten to know each other really well. We were both so hugely challenged by this particular project. We went back and forth with ideas and possibilities for months. It starts with the germ of an idea. We go back and forth as to what we think we can do stage-wise, otherwise with the piece. Then we start to think of actual storylines, how this might work. We have to be able to visualize it. We're both theater people, so we have to be able to visualize it, and we have to be able to imagine it vocally. And then he came up with this idea about Nora and the radio. And I really liked it, and it really struck me. So then we started talking about, well, what would be her journey? And that would fit into a 1-act opera with all these people on stage. And little by little, we began to shape the journey. And then I sent it to you, and you just responded instantly that you loved it. You loved the whole idea and the way it would go. So then we went from there. And then a lot of the work then is Jean's coming up with language for what's going on with Nora. But initially, in his first draft, there really was none of the stuff that was going on with Nora for the bad day. It started immediately with Nora just by herself and the choir doing sort of sound effects. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the sound effect thing. I thought, yes, a score to her life so that we're getting a sense of her in the moment. But what is she thinking? What's going on? What's motivating her? And that's when we came up with the idea of half the choir representing her ego, her internal thoughts, and the radio choir ever present sort of mysteriously in the background, giving us a sense of place, of time, of motion, of objectivity. And that's when it really started to come together. And then once we hit that, it moved forward very closely. The idea of using a silent actress was also a big breakthrough. But it's back and forth and back and forth, and really Gene's libretto isn't done until the score is done. And the score isn't done really until we're ready for opening night. So that means that words, phrases, other things can change, you know, right up until that moment of truth.
John, now let's talk about the aspect of staging. You've worked with Jim Tolley before. In conceiving the idea of the radio and music themes, how did the two of you envision the look and feel of the staging during the performance? How will the themes of the work be connected to the ideas in the staging?
As Jake and I have discussed, there's a lot of people on stage here. You know, in regular opera, you have a few major characters that you're dealing with staging.
Right.
And if the chorus comes in, they just come in and sing a little bit, you know, in a group, and then they all leave, and leave your three characters to stage. And here, we have 24 singers on stage that are having to be staged, and we have to create some kind of set and some sort of design for it. So the set is created because of the way the piece is structured, and that for the first half of the piece there is a choir that is the radio choir. And what the radio choir is a recording choir. It's the choir that Nora hears when she turns on the radio. They're actually in the studio singing for the radio audience. And so part of the stage, which is where we are right now, is that this is going to be the upstage area in high, is basically a recording studio. The other half of the staging, there's two different scenes. The other scene is Nora's apartment. And Nora's apartment, as we have it planned right now, is going to be downstage. And the radio is going to be the magical door that she can go through to actually enter the recording studio, if that makes any sense. This is the Alice in Wonderland part. I just absolutely love it. So the stage is two different designs, and two different scenes, I should say, but they occur simultaneously because the music of the radio choir and the music of the Nora choir in Nora's apartment are all going on at the same time. And this is the real challenge that Jake and I have talked about, and that Jim, our stage designer, is also talking about in creating a new choral art form.
John, the concept of radio hour requires that Pacific Chorale's professional singers memorize and actually become the inner voices of Nora on stage. How do you select singers for a performance opportunity like this? And then how do you rehearse them?
How did we audition and select the singers for this performance? And it is a challenge because we're going into something very new. And first of all, we are an established professional choir. And consequently, the choir exists as it is, but we do make minor changes of personnel because we do so many projects, everybody can't do them. So we have the subs, so to speak, that are standard subs who will come in and replace in each section. The interesting thing that I learned in this process of trying to create these new works is that our audition process is totally screwy. Because it's the standard audition process of any professional classically trained choir, and that is, it's all about your voice. It has nothing to do with anything else except your voice and your musicianship. It has to do with the fact that you can actually sing choral music beautifully as well as solo literature beautifully. But it's all in the classical framework. And never do we ask them what their stage experience is. Never do we ask them, what is your experience in dance? Right. We'll ask them what their experience is in language because we do works of all different languages.
You don't ask for a monologue. Probably.
We don't ask for a monologue. No. So we suddenly realize we don't have the materials in our process to evaluate the singers well. And the fortunate thing in this project is that I did do the staged project of the Lang Little Match Girl Passion just a few years ago. And we learned in that process which those of our singers who are capable to move on stage and who are not. And we're using the same stage designer, and he also knows which of our singers are really, really capable at this and have extensive, I mean, we have singers with extensive experience in opera and musical theater that are also fine ensemble singers. So we learned that the process was not good, but we are very, very careful in the way we are selecting the ones that are going to do this particular project. What is wonderful is that Jake understands the issue. And the way he's written the piece is that from some of our singers, you are required to be more active in the way the choirs are set and the role of the two choirs. And for other singers, they won't have quite as much activity on stage, but they are more there giving the musical emphasis of the work. So we have been very careful in the way we actually place our choirs together and the way we separate the choir into two choirs to be sure that the singers have the capability. But what I've learned from it is I'm going to change my whole audition process. They're going to see a completely different process.
You selected Eve Himmelhaber to play Nora on stage. Can you tell us a little bit about how you selected her and how she will portray the character of Nora during the performance?
First of all, let me clarify that how I selected her is the wrong question, because I definitely needed help. I'm a classical conductor, and I'm not a good evaluation person to evaluate the qualities of an actress. So I definitely had help with this, and our stage director, Jim Tolley, was a great help. But I can answer now why Eve is the good Nora, or I feel I can answer that. First of all, she is a classically theatrical actress, classically trained, okay, which needs to be to create this part. Okay, that's her principal issue. She is the right age. She is the type of person, when you look at her, that you know would have the capability. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. But you know, I mean, she's so vivacious and everything, you know if she gets mad at you,
watch out.
Watch out, you're going to be in trouble. So she has that dramatic element naturally in her that she needs in order to be the character of Nora. The other thing is, since this crazy new choral opera situation that we're creating, she has extensive experience in musical theater.
Yeah.
She also has choral singing experience. And in order for her to relate to a choir that is her voice, I find that to be a very, very important element. She also has in her background quite a bit of dance experience. And Jake and Jean have her doing a wild dance right near the end, even though she is beyond the age that people would normally dance professionally. But she has the experience to do that and the ability to do that. So it's all these unique things that come together that I think make her absolutely the perfect candidate for the role.
So how did you create the image of the radio? Can we expect to hear some channel surfing?
I don't know about you, but I grew up listening to the radio. And part of listening to the radio was changing channels and surfing, and especially if you were going through some emotional event in your life, you're having a bad day, you just got told that you just got broken up with, or a teacher yelled at you or a parent yelled at you, somehow you'd find something on the radio that went zing. Wow, they're singing right about me. This is so weird. Everyone's had that experience. I can't believe this song just came on. That's exactly how I feel. It's like it was written for me. And then you turn the channel and someone's telling a story and you're like, oh, that happened to me too. And that sort of led me to the idea of how we would introduce the element of the radio into Nora's life. That she's having this horrible day and all these terrible experiences, and she looks for comfort to the radio, maybe to get her mind off of it. And what it does is reinforces everything that she's going through. Every song she turns to, or every ad that she lands on, seems to be reinforcing something negative that she feels about herself at that moment. And it even gets to the point where she's changing back and forth. She hits, a very sort of sensuous Latin kind of feeling song called Nada Más. She hits a rap song. She hits a real energetic sort of big band swing song. She hits an ad for an antidepressant called Stabilify. She hits all different kinds of things, and what happens is she keeps trying to switch back and forth to find something else to get out of this funk, and she winds up not being able to switch the stations at all. The radio is now telling her, even after she unplugs it, something weird is going on. And it was this idea of like having that the dialogue that you're having inside yourself is already happening inside the radio. That's how we sort of developed the idea of how to use the radio and what the radio represents, so that when it's finally quiet and a door opens, it's an invitation to change, and it's an invitation to something else. You know, it's not even that she knows that it's going to be a better change. It's just something else. It's something different. And so the radio had always been there for her. It's always been in our world. These sound waves that go on, the soundtrack to our lives that we're aware of or we're not. And so she enters, and suddenly it's a magical world. And this is the transformation that John was talking about. And she and we can wonder, you know, what would happen if I suddenly stepped into that magical world? Well, I think we have that opportunity every day of our lives. It's just whether we pay attention or not. And Nora finally pays attention and agrees to participate. And I think that's sort of the concept of how the radio's developed the use of it.
You know, and adding to that, if you can imagine that all the styles that Jake just talked about, I mean, the not a much, you know, Latin style, a rap song.
Yeah. With the choir beatboxing.
With the choir beatboxing. I mean, all of these styles, listening to this piece is a phenomenal experience, because you have true classical beauty in it, but you have all of these styles intermixed, which I think is just extraordinary for music. And it shows this man's tremendous skill, because he can just switch us. It switches right, you know, in 1 second we're switched to a completely different musical style and score. And
I think that's very American too, that range of styles, that sort of eclectic taste that we have. Because what is American music? It's all of that. It's all of that and more. So I like the challenge that Gene presented to me with the radio and these different styles, with the lyrics that he wrote. Because the challenge was, of course, I wanted to make it sound authentic and yet still part of the whole of this piece, so that it does feel like it belongs in this sound world of this piece, but it pops out in its own individual way. And it gives us information. And we establish actual musical themes that are sometimes very subtle, that come back in different ways throughout the piece.
John, what audience do you think will be compelled to attend the premiere performance of Jake Heggie's The Radio Hour?
I don't think anyone is necessarily compelled to go hear anything, but I think what will draw people, or what should draw people to see this work, is that it is this wonderful mixture of all these different art forms coming together. And I think what is wonderful about it is that if a person loves the theater, this is definitely a theatrical piece. If a person likes instrumental music, there is a wonderful chamber ensemble with beautiful music written for them. If a person likes opera, they can hear an opera. If a person likes choral music, they're going to hear some gorgeous choral singing from the JAS. And so it has all of these different elements, and visual elements and theatrical elements. And so it is my hope that, and I think Jake's hope too, I think he's looking for the same thing, is an art form that brings more people together within that art form, that is not looking for the separated audience. This, I want to go hear the choral concert, that's what I like, or I just want to go hear the symphony. But to bring a form together that gives something for everybody. And so I think there is going to be a broad audience that wants to hear this piece.
I would add to that people who are interested in theatrical work will find surprises in this piece. And that's something I think we're all interested in. You don't have to do any preparation. It's not a story that you have to research or know a lot of history about. You can come and enjoy beautiful singing and a wide range of colors and emotions and experiences, and a huge emotional journey in this piece. It is an opera. It's a choral opera, so it has choir music, it has elements of opera, including theater and staging and singing and design and movement and costume and lights. It's in a gorgeous theater right here in Orange County, and it features wonderful players from the symphony, and John Alexander leading it all. I think it's an amazing opportunity for the audiences locally, theatrical audiences, opera audiences, chamber music audiences, choral audiences, to come together and see how we're mixing all of those forms into something very new and very special and surprising.
Jake, do you think you'll carry the idea of choral opera into your work in other genres?
I think I was so challenged by the idea of writing this choral opera that I think it's in my blood and bones now, so I'm sure it will appear definitely in stage works that I'm doing. I'm writing a new opera now with Terrence McNally for the singer Joyce DiDonato. The Dallas Opera commissioned a piece called Great Scott, and it has a big choir that's involved, and I will think about the choir completely differently from now on. And I hope to write a lot more choral music. I have some of it in my future. I don't take on a piece without it scaring me a little bit, and part of that terror means I have to break through walls that I either built up or I haven't taken the time to go through yet. And this piece opened up so many of those walls and doors that I know it will stay with me. The whole style of the piece, the feeling of the piece, I know it's part of my musical language now.
John, I understand that you're planning a recording of the work. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I am really, really happy that Delos Recordings is very interested in this project, so they have agreed that we're going to do a premiere recording of this work paired with other choral works that Jake has done, and so we're going to put out the first CD of Jake Heggie choral works, and I'm expecting, Jake, that there's going to be lots more choral works for the future.
Yes.
And that you are going to
well, you're my inspiration. Thank you.
I'd like to thank John Alexander and Jake Heggie for joining me today to talk about the Radio Hour. We are looking forward to attending the premiere performance of this groundbreaking new work on May 18th. If you are interested in learning more or obtaining tickets for the performance, we encourage you to visit our website, www.pacificchorale.org.